Okay, is that better?
Much better. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome to this course. This is a course on data analytics for the Masters in Health Informatics at UT Southwestern. I want to introduce you to my co-teacher, Haley Kosker. So, and Dr. Tetteh, before we start, let me just do a quick introduction for you, and then we'll turn it over to you. So Dr. Hassan Tetteh is a distinguished physician, executive, board-certified thoracic surgeon, author, and an inspiring public speaker with a remarkable blend of clinical excellence, leadership experience, and humanitarian vision. He's a native of Brooklyn, New York. Dr. Tetteh served for 25 years in leadership roles across medicine, military service, health policy, and technology. Dr. Tetteh is a retired captain in the United States Navy, where he served as a combat trauma and thoracic surgeon, including deployments in Afghanistan and leadership roles as Chief Medical Informatics Officer and Health Mission Chief for the Department of Defense. He's also served as an Associate Professor of Surgery at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences and adjunct faculty at Howard University College of Medicine. I believe he's now also serving as faculty at Johns Hopkins in the Carey School of Business. Beyond his clinical and academic roles, Dr. Tetteh is a visionary healthcare innovation in human-centered care. He founded the Specialized Thoracic Adaptive Recovery, so STAR teams, to advance organ transplant outcomes. And he leads initiatives that integrate artificial intelligence and informatics into healthcare delivery. He's the founder of the Tetteh Consulting Group and CEO of Human Care Technologies. And his writing includes The Art of Human Care, reflects his belief in compassion and purposeful leadership. Dr. Tetteh holds multiple advanced degrees across medicine, public policy, business, and national security strategy for institutions including Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and the National War College. His work has been recognized with prestigious awards, and he's an engaging speaker, as you will find out. And he has broad expertise and spans of clinical practice, policy, leadership, and innovation. And I mentioned one of his books, but I also am a proud owner of a new book, Smarter Healthcare with AI. And one of my most prized possessions is I actually have a signed copy of that book. So thank you, Dr. Tetteh, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, awesome. I've tried to share my screen. Is it sharing?
Yes.
You see it?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for a very kind introduction. Much too kind and too verbose. I like to just go with kid from Brooklyn, happens to be a husband and a father, and sometimes surgeon. So, and I got all dressed up for you guys. I chose this tie. I don't know if you can see. I have zeros and ones on it. Zoom in. All right. Well, I'll go into this presentation here and try and go through it so that we maybe have some time for some discussion and questions at the end. But this is a philosophy I have. I've been sharing this theme of how AI will change everything except what matters most. So it's a little bit storytelling, some context for things that are going on right now, and hopefully some perspective for how to look at this world of ours that's evolving rapidly with every day. So I do have this disclaimer. I always like to say I'm not speaking on behalf of the Department of Defense, the Navy, USIS, or the Marine Corps government. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing AI to you all because you all are very well versed with this fascinating phenomena and tool and platform and however you wanted to describe it. But I do want to level set what I want to convey is the definition that I'm going to sort of speaking about in the context of the way I look at it. And I like to think of AI, at least in the context of these slides and our discussion here, as it is machines that are mimicking human behavior and human behavior that is being mimicked by machines. So if we agree that that's the definition that we'll use, that will, I think, encompass much of the perceptions and perhaps the definitions you all hold for what AI is. And I say that because AI is always evolving. So if you think about a machine mimicking human behavior and human behavior being mimicked by machines, depending on the time and space in which you snapshot AI and define it, it can be a lot of things. There was a time, as I like to always reflect on, where people thought washing machines were AI because it was mimicking human behavior. And obviously, we have this era of chatbots and probably humanoid robots that are going to be coming on the pike, and there'll be lots of things that are mimicking human behaviors that are embodied in machines. So, of course, it has a long history, defined back in the 50s, different types, of course. But what I'd like to focus on is this topic of AI changing everything except what matters most. And you might be asking, what does that mean? Hopefully, I will convey what that means throughout the next few slides here. I like to highlight this. This is one of my very special moments in my career where I was featured in the Wall Street Journal, which is, by the way, my favorite periodical, even though I'm a physician and I probably should be a fan of things like the New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA and all those other very prestigious medical journals, which I always respect and read and appreciate. The Wall Street Journal is my go-to periodical. I read it every day, and to have made it into the paper some years ago was a crowning moment. And it was a focus on the work that I was doing, as Pat alluded to, at the Pentagon when I was at the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center working on the Warfighter Health Mission portfolio. And that is really, it was the beginning of how the book that he referenced came into fruition. So the title of this article was How AI Will Make Your Doctor Smarter. And they highlighted many of the things that our team was working on. But this is sort of the anchor for my discussion of what I mean by AI changing everything except the things that matter most. So there are three objectives, of course, beyond telling you why I think AI will change everything except what matters most, and then defining what those things are. The three objectives are to provide an environmental scan of digital health and AI, hopefully something that you all will find of great interest given your majors and concentration of study, highlight how AI will change everything, and then provide a perspective and a way forward. One thing here, this book, AI Revolution in Medicine, was one of the early books that was written right around the dawn of OpenAI's release of ChatGPT. And Peter Lee, who is from Microsoft, was the author along with some of his colleagues, and he really outlines, I think, a really good roadmap that is largely coming to fruition about how ChatGPT and, of course, everything beyond that was going to fundamentally change healthcare and medicine in particular. And I had the honor of meeting him. Here is a little selfie with him, as well as serve on a strategic planning committee with him for the National Academy of Medicine, which was a really great treat. I'm going to highlight some opportunities that I think you all are in a perfect position to capitalize on, and then share some frontline lessons that come from the experience that I've had, not only in my 25 years of the military, but all of the things that have happened as adjunct to that experience. This is two of my memorable occasions of memorable deployments. So one of them on the top there is the Carl Vinson CVN-70. I was on the aircraft carrier as a ship surgeon for 2 years. I spent 2 years living on board that ship and 19 months out to sea, went around the world, saw a lot of things, and spent some time in the Persian Gulf in support of the Iraqi campaign when we were there many years ago. And then the picture below is a group of our medical team. This was during a deployment in Afghanistan. And this is our medical team. You can see we're all holding weapons. It was a bad neighborhood, apparently. And if you're trying to see or recognize who I am, I'm the tan fellow with the shades. So I also share some insight on digital health, because artificial intelligence, of course, holds huge promise in healthcare, but also faces massive barriers, particularly right now. So some of those challenges are clear, and some of them are not so clear. This is a very consequential picture, and this will be the impetus for the reflection I have at the end about what things matter most beyond AI. This was my second meeting with General Colin Powell, the late General Colin Powell, while I was at the War College. And it was at the War College where I was studying national security strategy. I was the only physician in my class of 200. That was very significant because I was learning alongside national security experts, warfighters, and various senior leaders in different agencies in government, among them the CIA, FBI, etc. And we had a concentration and a focus on national security. And it was where I had the opportunity through our discussions and inquiries to really learn about how AI was being used in the national security community in a way that really had, in my mind, a lot of parallel application to healthcare. And so if you can imagine the time, this was around 2016, 2017, so some time ago, sitting in discussions and listening to how the intelligence community were using AI tools and advanced analytics to make better decisions, I saw an immediate application in healthcare because that's what I spent most of my career doing. And so I worked on a thesis that ultimately became a paper called AI in Military Medicine, the Strategic Application of Our Era. And like I said, this is the second meeting that I had with General Powell, and I'll come back to that. But it is important to note that I have been very interested in health informatics and data, computers, technology from a very young age. I used to program. Many of you are probably not the appropriate generation to know about this computer, but I'm sure Pat and others may know. You could also Google it. But I used to program my Commodore 64. I have fond memories of spending hours and hours in the weekends programming my Commodore 64. It was named as much because it only had 64K RAM, and it was one of the early relics, but one that I treasured a lot. And so I had this perception, and still do, that technology, and particularly electronic medical records, electronic health records, and data can do very important things in healthcare and can be leveraged to improve care. So way back when, in 2010, I had the audacity to write something like this. And I say audacity because many people did not have electronic health records back then, and not in 2010 anyway. That came much later as a mandate. But in the military, we were accustomed to using electronic health records, and this was a perspective that I wrote about, which is achieving nirvana through an electronic medical record system, a military surgeon's perspective. And you can see that was in May of 2010, a long time ago. But there are opportunities. I always have trepidation of showing this slide, but I think this brief video rather, and you'll see why I think it still has application, or at least I hope you will. But this is to give perspective. This was a talk that I gave. I was invited as a secondary speaker because the initial invitee could not make it for a number of reasons. And so I was a pinch hitter to speak at the American Medical Informatics Association. That was in 2019. So it was before the pandemic, before ChatGPT. And I was sharing to the audience some of the work that we were doing at the time at the Pentagon. And I'll just let it play so you can appreciate the
magic that's happening. A few weeks ago, I was in the operating room. And I think this is why it's so pivotal to have practitioners develop these solutions alongside other professionals, because we have the perspective and the inclination to see what will work and what won't work. And while I was doing this case, which is traditional, the liver surgeon was taking a biopsy of the liver. We happened to be at a small hospital, and we have to wait for the pathologist to give us a reading on how much necrosis and fat is in the cells to see if the liver is going to be used. We waited for 4 hours because it was a small hospital and the pathologist was out and they had to get the tech, and it was ridiculous. And while I was there waiting, I was thinking about informatics and AI, like I always do. Really what I was thinking about was, how can we make this better? That's what all of you do every day. How can we make this better, whatever this is? And in my question to myself, I said to myself, we are in medical imaging classification right now working on a project of delivering augmented reality microscopes that have been trained on algorithms to detect, in this case, cancer. By looking into the microscope, little rings get drawn around the abnormal cells. And I said to my colleague, hey, what if we had a microscope in the OR or maybe down in pathology that we could stick this liver slide in and we could train it to find out how much fat and how much necrosis is there. And then maybe we could telemedicine or just take a picture and snap it to the radiologist so then we have to wait 4 hours and keep all these other recipients waiting. You know what he said to me? Ah, it'll never happen. I've been practicing surgery for 30 years. I heard about this AI stuff 20 years ago. And behind my mask, I had a big smile on my face. But I also recognize this challenge. We have to be evangelists because our practitioners may not know what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, we may not know what the art of the possible is. So, like I said, I always lament about putting that in because it was so many years ago, but it still has application. Even just the other day, I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine about, their apprehension for using AI and why they thought all things were not good and they didn't believe it was going to help their practice. And you probably have heard, statements akin to, well, don't be afraid of using AI, but you should be aware and afraid of people that do use AI taking your job and certainly making you and your resistance to using AI obsolete. And I do believe that it's going to continue to evolve and be a defining application, utility, and general purpose technology, as I alluded to in our lives. What I want to do here is define our era, and I always like to level set and provide some perspective because I think we are certainly living in an era. Certainly humans have lived in eras and through eras all throughout life, but sometimes people are living in an era or they are experiencing lots of change in a dramatic way and they don't really understand the impact on our lives. And this is kind of speaking to this concept of AI changing everything. And if you think about it in this particular time, I do believe we are living in an era. And how we define an era? An era, of course, is a period marked by distinctive character events changes before and after which the practices change to a significant degree, meaning that you will not do things the same way as you did them before. And certainly one of the, I think, greatest events that has impacted all of humankind, and certainly in a global way, it was the COVID-19 pandemic that we all lived through. And we can certainly, I think, attest to the fact that many of the things that we did before the pandemic and now after the pandemic and even through the pandemic are certainly different. Many of our perspectives have changed, some of our habits have changed, and certainly a lot of what we thought was important before the pandemic is no longer as important, while other things have taken up importance. And the other thing that I think that we can certainly attest to is making a big difference and an impact is generative AI. Now, these are just two things that are impacting our particular era, but there is, in my opinion, no question that we're living through an era. Now, it's important to appreciate when you're living in an era so that you can adapt and change and begin to develop practices and habits that make the emergence and the living through the era not only tolerable, but also possible for you to thrive. Because if you continue to do the things in the same way, there are chances that you could be left behind in a number of ways. I'd like to also share with you some of the very cool things that we're able to do during the time at the Jake. And I'm proud of these things because they represent just a fraction of all the work that we did, but they give you a perspective at a macro level and also at a micro level. And so for the macro example, this was one of the tools that we developed in the early part of the pandemic. If you can recall, the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020, the spring of 2020, March in particular, when everyone sort of was sent home, and we thought it was only going to be for a few weeks, and it turned out to be many months and years later, where many people were, displaced from their workplaces and sort of daily activities of living, and things were quite disruptive. Well, around that very same time, when we were all sent away from the Pentagon in our office spaces and at home hunkering down, we felt a tremendous amount of angst to do something and help. And if you recall the very early part of the pandemic, there was a very inconsistent testing and an awareness of where COVID was. And dare I say, people were experiencing COVID in different ways at different times, especially in the very beginning. The very hard-hit cities of the coast, like New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, were feeling the pandemic in a different way. I certainly was. On a personal level, I lost family members. I'm originally from a little town in New York called Brooklyn, as was alluded to. And I had family members that I lost during that time. So it was a very difficult, challenging time, especially when you couldn't go out to see people and everyone was sheltering in place. So as members of the Warfighter Health Mission team, we started to brainstorm about how could we use AI, advanced analytics, to really make a difference. And one of the things that we came up with was a model that we developed to track COVID cases throughout the country. And we did this in a very novel and unique way. What we did was we were able to work with our colleagues from CMS at Health and Human Services. We had a number of very brilliant, bright engineers, data scientists working with us from AWS, from IBM, from Microsoft. And we reverse engineered CMS claims data. And if you're aware of the claims data, this is the information that hospitals submit to CMS to get reimbursement. And at the time, there wasn't a code for COVID, but there were codes for flu-like symptoms. And so what we did was we took that data and we were able to get better and better fidelity through time of claims data. And we used that claims data to build a model with the assumption that flu-like symptoms, particularly for a particular age group, probably and likely represented COVID cases. And so we built these kinds of models, and this is a snapshot of LA County's map. You can see the dark areas where our model predicted where COVID cases were going to emerge. And we had a couple of weeks of foresight. So this was to show in the future what would happen. And what you see with the dark circles are some of our validation and testing, because the dark circles, and the darker the circle and the larger the circle, represented the density of hospitalization. So you can see there was pretty good correlation with a lot of that. And we did this down to the zip code level for the entire country. And not only did we use the claims data, but we were able to build models with even greater sensitivity and specificity by using things like the movement of supplies and shipments from Amazon. And we were able to deploy needed resources to where we thought they were needed most, as opposed to just shotgunning things out. So if you can imagine, back then, there was a shortage of masks early on. There was a shortage of personnel. Where do you send the nurses? Where do you send the doctors? Where do you send the National Guard to help? And this was helpful in determining and helping inform some of those decisions. And then turning a little bit to the micro example, this is actually the culmination of that microscope example that I referenced in the video. And this was a paper that we did, which was an independent assessment of deep learning system for lymph node metastasis detection on the augmented reality microscope. So using that microscope platform, we were able to show that with the microscope, not only was there a fidelity with the microscope being able to determine and discern between different tissue types, but when we referenced the ability to predict cancer and malignancy with the model, and the experts in pathology for those particular tissue and tumor types, the models were actually as good, and in many cases beat the experts. So it showed great promise. And these microscopes were deployed in different hospitals throughout the military health system and in the VA, and they were used and still are being used to help enhance the workflow of the pathologists and help them enhance their diagnostic capabilities and their throughput, improving their efficiency in getting detection and diagnoses much faster. And then kind of giving a little bit of a historical concept that the evolution of AI augmented clinical decision making is actually something that's not new. This is a paper that is often cited from a very long time ago, 2017, seems like ancient history now, but dermatologist level classification of skin cancers. And this was with deep neural networks well before the advent of large language models. And even then, it was pretty clear that these neural networks were able to discern just by images malignant versus non-malignant and benign lesions. And here you can see how those schematic taxonomies of these test sets were sort of used and implemented to build these models. And when you look at the performance of these neural networks and the dermatologists, you can see that. Let me see if I zoom in here, if you can see that. So you see the algorithm, and you see the red are the dermatologists, and then you see the expert versus the average, and you can see that the models are performing pretty good, very good sensitivity, very good specificity, and able to discern between melanoma and carcinomas in different images. And that was well back then, so it's even better now. So what's next? I think this is a good slide. I borrowed it from my colleagues from Columbia. I recently took a course on AI and business. I'm continually learning about AI, even though I'm even teaching it as I learn. But this was a very good depiction of where I think we are and where we are going. And I like this AI ladder. It's something that's referenced quite a bit in these discussions of recent times. So if we think about where we started, right? Machine learning, of course, was fueled by data and having feedback, and certainly compute and the ability to have more GPUs contributed to the ability to do more data processing and then develop these really cool algorithms. And then, of course, it was the transformer that kind of changed everything when it came to the large language model. And then, of course, storage allows us to have more and more capacity to train on data. You no longer have to worry about a floppy disk, but you have, almost endless amounts of storage in the cloud. That's kind of where we've been up until now. Where we are now is, AI potentially being better than most humans in most tasks. Again, machines mimicking human behavior being mimicked by machines. And if you think about some of the use cases that we have now, language translation, generating content, whether it be images, video, speech, and the utility in business, of course, consulting. I'm going to reference something that's just in the news as well, just in the last 36 hours, and fine tuning and AI transformation. So if you think about these stages of the evolution of AI, some people, they debated whether it's, 10 stages, 12 stages, 15 stages. This show references 15 different stages. And a lot of people believe now that we're reasoning and we're an agent. So we're sort of around stage 8 and possibly stage 9. And the next stage is kind of where we're heading into the future. And this kind of goes to this AI changing everything domain. And I referenced the paper of the general purpose technology of our era. If you think about AI as our general purpose technology of our era, about 100 plus years ago, our colleagues that were living back then were going through their own general purpose technology boom. And it was something called electricity. And of course, you had a lot of people that were resistant to it and thought it was very dangerous. And certainly there was a lot of problems with electricity early on, with fires and so forth. People getting electrocuted and trying to harness it and tame it. And now we don't think about electricity at all. It's in the background. And I think that's kind of how AI is going to be as well. And it's just going to be this iteration, our generation of general purpose technology. And a lot of people are believing that we're in sort of this 9, 10, and 11 phase right now. And whether or not we get to consciousness, which is what a lot of people have embodied or defined as artificial general intelligence, is yet to be seen. And when that will happen, we are not really quite sure. But I do believe that we've certainly been progressing through many of these stages of the ladder. And now, when you think about this explainability and innovators and organizations, the idea and the thought is that we're encountering a time and a moment where AI agents are now working autonomously and they're mimicking human behavior and doing things on their own, obviously with a little bit of direction, but they're making decisions autonomously. The explainability hopefully will get better, but there is a possibility that you may have a single person billion-dollar company in the future. In other words, one of you perhaps will think of an idea and have a business and develop a value proposition for that business. And instead of hiring humans or individuals to do the work, you'll deploy AI agents and they'll go out and do all the work. And just by yourself with directing AI agents, you'll create enough value and develop a business proposition that will probably reward you handsomely. And that's not too far-fetched. And organizations are going to start experiencing that. And the embodiment part is really speaking to this concept of marrying AI with robotics. Robots have been around forever. As I mentioned, people thought a washing machine was a robot and also AI. But when you marry the sort of synthetic brain concept with the humanoid robot or a robot that looks to be embodying something, I think things will get much, much more interesting. And then, of course, alignment and then how society will accept AI. Well, are all things we're going to be grappling with, I think, in the years to come. And of course, defining and understanding what consciousness means and how we deal with that. So this is a very prescient quote because I think it really talks to this concept of how AI is going to change everything. And when I talk to my colleagues in healthcare, because I've been sort of surrounded by all of this great, innovative and dynamic world of computer science and programming and coding and data and all the things that go into it, I liken what's going on in computer science to what probably happened to us in healthcare over the years, but it all happening at once. So when you think of Jensen Huang, who is of course very well known because of NVIDIA, leading NVIDIA's to its multi-trillion-dollar valuation, and he says generative AI is the single most significant platform transition in computing history. Certainly that's self-serving. He may be a little biased, but it's not far-fetched to say that. And when I listen to this quote and I see what I've seen and I've experienced with my colleagues in the computer science world, I realize that what is akin to what's happened in computer science is kind of like having blood transfusions, antibiotics, anesthesia, and antisepsis all happening at once in healthcare. Like if you think about each one of those things changed healthcare dramatically in and of itself, but they're all happening at the same time. And I think for computer scientists, that's kind of what's happening to them right now. The entire thing is just being upended and changing so rapidly. So what about the future? Well, there's a lot to be said about the future. Certainly, I think it's going to continue to permeate our daily lives and everything. So this is what I meant about what's happened in the last 36 hours. I thought this would be good to just reference. So again, reading my favorite journal, I see that what you need to know about the AI models rattling markets. So if you've been following the markets, there seems to be this consensus globally about how AI's advancements, particularly from Anthropic and others, and how they're able to do things that only these big software companies were able to do, and sort of had this lock on intellectual capital and maybe a little bit of IP in terms of processing legal forms or developing, you name it, whatever software companies out there. Well, if you can now have generative AI do some of those things, those companies may not have the lock that they thought they had on their own customers. And that sent the markets rattling, of course, developing a lot of uncertainty. It rebounded a little bit, but I think people recognize that a software company could be completely upended. And when you think about the erasure of $300 billion in the market on one day, that's pretty significant. I wanted to highlight that one of the things I got to do today was work at go to DARPA. I was at the DARPA workshop today on combat casualty care. I've been working with them over the years, and so it's really neat to be invited to visit with my colleagues and think about some really hard things. So this is a video that highlights and advertise for those people that are out there that are working on really cool things, what DARPA is interested in, and to see if we can help bring some innovators into some of the challenges that they have. So I'm just going to play this video because this is exactly what I was doing today, and it kind of like gives you a flavor for what things are going on.
When you deploy, as I have numerous times, both on the aircraft carrier and in the Middle East and in different parts of the world, at times we can get numerous casualties at the same time, just taxing the resources that we have. From a logistics standpoint, from a human capital standpoint, from a resource standpoint.
We don't actually have a real good, robust triage system to use right now that's trained across the force. I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're kind of eyeballing the person, looking at their vital signs, kind of doing a little of this right here. And also our current triage tools require that you actually have to assess the patient directly. The idea of being able to potentially triage people without having to be face-to-face would be really a game changer.
To take care of multiply injured patients at once is certainly a big challenge. Knowing the degree of their injury and how they're going to do in the next few minutes and next few hours so that I could appropriately triage my time and our team's time is really, really important, and not something that is intuitive or obvious within those first few minutes.
So there's such tremendous opportunity for us to apply technologies in these domains to help us do our work better. Because what we have now is massive amount of computing power, different generation, if you will, of what we call artificial intelligence right now. And we have massive investments in a talented cadre of individuals that are working on a myriad of things that are all coming to bear right now in healthcare. This DARPA challenge is really unique in the sense that it's affording an opportunity for teams to bring their ideas and their solutions to a challenge, a problem set that could revolutionize absolutely how we do things. And when it comes to taking care of really, really sick people, really, really injured people and traumatic people, I think we have an opportunity here in particular. I think we're going to see leaps and bounds of what's to come that are really going to make a big difference in the future.
So what's next? I'll prepare to close here and sort of offer the way forward and kind of bring this whole discussion full circle. I think there's some considerations for the future. And among those considerations is something that I think is ushering a new frontier for us, using the technology to impact patient care in a way that's never been done before. And I think it's really important to consider the 5 super forces that I think are going to continue to play a big role in what we do. Of course, it's sensors and computer power. I have a smartwatch here that has been very helpful in helping me achieve some of my goals, which is a recent Ironman of last year, and working on another, and it's all because of the sensors and the computer and all the data that I've been able to use and sort of synthesize. Health policy, there's been a lot of health policy changes, and 2024 was a big year for health policy insofar as really bringing in the world of digital therapeutics being reimbursed, which certainly realigns incentives for providers and tech companies. Lots of commercial and government investments, as you know, and data and connectivity. And then here's the most important super force I like to think about, and it's people. And it's people because people have been the ones that have innovated and created the technology that we're talking about right now. And I think will continue to drive what happens in the future. And these are some of the lessons from the front lines I promised I would share with you. And there's sort of 3 categories: how to survive, how to thrive. And in that how to thrive, I'll talk a little bit about why I believe AI will change everything except the things that matter most. And then, of course, how you as individuals in your stage of career can exceed expectations. So one of my favorite quotes is from Darwin, which is often mischaracterized as survival of the fittest. It's not actually what was said. It is this: it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. That's definitely true for me. but the ones most responsive to change. And I think that's the real message that I want to convey. So how is it that you survive? You be responsive to change. And if you recognize that you're in an era and you are responsive to those changes, you adapt your behaviors, I think you're going to be able to survive. How do you thrive? I think you thrive by really honing in on what makes us uniquely human. And this is, my way of sort of tying in the concept of AI changing everything. I hope I convinced you that that is the case, but also this about how it will change everything except what matters most. So I mentioned to you that this was the second time that I met the late, great General Colin Powell. The first time I met him was actually about a year before this picture was taken. And at the time, I was serving as the command surgeon at the National Defense University. And as command surgeon at National Defense University, it's on a rotation. The Navy, Air Force, and Army sends one. And I was the Navy guy at the time. And there was an event that was happening, and General Powell was having a library, a very famous library on campus dedicated to him, the Roosevelt Hall. Beautiful library. And General Powell is one of the most contemporary, most famous contemporary alumni of National Defense University, National War College in particular. And I volunteered because they asked for medical support for his dedication ceremony. So at that ceremony, he was flanked by his family members and, of course, all these dignitaries, and they wanted to have a medical person around in case someone needed medical assistance and attention. And I volunteered for that. So I had to stay from the beginning all the way to the end till the very last person left. And at the end of the night, General Powell was there just by himself and just with his family. And for the very first time, the entire evening, he was by himself in the library and no one was around him. And I said, this is my moment. And I went and made a beeline for him. And I shook his hand, I introduced myself, and he was the most magnanimous, most gracious individual you ever want to meet. And if you've ever heard stories of people that met him or know about his leadership or read about his philosophy on leadership, he really embodied everything in that moment. And it was just a few minutes of my encounter with him. And essentially, the essence of what we talked about was all about me. He was really interested in learning about what was going on with me and what I was doing there. And I told him I was here to support his event. He was really thankful and grateful, really genuinely so. And then, of course, like many great leaders, he always asked, well, what are you doing next? What's your next move? And I said, well, sir, I'm going to go to the Eisenhower School because that's where they send the doctors. There are a number of schools on the campus. And being an alma mater, being a National War College graduate and being proud of his alumni, he said, no, you don't want to go there. You want to go to the National War College. And I said, well, sir, I don't think they let the doctors go to the National War College. And you may remember I shared with you earlier that I was the only doc in my class at the National War College. And it was largely in part because of this encounter, very brief encounter with General Powell, who convinced me, and I subsequently convinced my superior that I should go to the National War College because General Powell said so. And so I found myself as the only doc immersed in this different curriculum with this incredible opportunity to learn more about AI in a way that I would have never had exposure to it, and then work on a thesis, which ultimately got read and ultimately led to my recruitment of leading the Drone Artificial Intelligence Warfighter Health Mission portfolio. So this was the second time of me meeting him, and I was telling him at this time how grateful I was that he convinced or encouraged or nudged me into going to the National War College because I had a different experience and I was working on AI. And then, of course, fast forward, again, my favorite paper, a sad day in November where there was the morning of General Powell, and he happened to be on the front cover of this paper that I received. I still received the hard copy version. And this was in November of 2021. And it just so happened a few months ago, I had a chance encounter with a journalist that was interested in writing about my story. And on this day, this is who was on the front page of the paper. We were mourning his loss, General Powell, who ironically died of COVID, if you remember. And if you turn to page 13, this is what the article was. And it was never lost on me and how human this was and how you could never calculate by any algorithm this incredibly human story of how this man on the front page of the Wall Street Journal made page 13 possible because of his care, his concern, and his just being a great leader. So AI will change and impact everything except what matters most. And I think the things that matter most is what makes us human. Machines, as far as I know at this point, can't experience the death of a family member or the birth of a new human being, a son or a daughter. They won't know what it means to cry and what it means to be sad and what it means to be happy and what it means to be, you name the emotion. They can synthesize and mimic and maybe mirror what they've read and what they've learned, but I don't know if they will ever have what it means to be human. And that's why we have to keep that front and central for ourselves. So how do we exceed expectations? I think we exceed expectations by staying focused on the mission. That picture that I showed of the deployment, this was our tent. This is where I spent a lot of time. Hippocrates' quote was very appropriate at that time. He who wishes to be a surgeon should go to war, because I certainly had a different perspective for what surgery was all about after that. But in this tent, if you can think about it, looking back here, no running water, we're working on generators. And in that tent, we saved the lives of people that were injured mortally in a way that probably in the best hospital facilities in this United States of ours probably wouldn't survive. And the reason I think they survived for us is because we were mission focused and we worked as a team and we were really dedicated to what we were doing. And I think that's how you exceed expectations, being mission focused and dedicated, and of course working as a team, because then you can make the impossible possible. So I'm going to end with this final lesson from the front line and the way forward. And that is this: AI will change everything except what matters most. You all have incredible instructors and teachers and a huge opportunity in your respective disciplines now to impact how AI will continue to change the world. But I hope you hold dear and near the things that make us human, which is what matters most. And finally, this is a very good quote from the famous futurist Roy Amara. We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And certainly I think AI is no exception to that. And I'll leave you with this. There's a lot of people that talk about AI. There's fewer people that use AI. And then there's a very small amount of people that build AI. And I hope that you all will be those that build AI and build it in such a way that it truly transforms humankind in a positive way. Thank you very much for your attention.
So Hassan, thank you so much. What a treat. So I think we'll open up for questions from the students.
Thank you very much for your attention.
So Hassan, thank you so much. What a treat. So I think we'll open up for questions from the students. Aria, looks like you had your hand up first.
I'm sorry, I was trying to react.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No worries. Well, while we're getting questions up, I do have a question. So a lot of people are, it's good to be skeptical, but sometimes people get a little frozen with AI and, it might provide, misinformation, or it might provide, the wrong result. Especially as a surgeon, obviously you're aware of, the whole concept of medical errors. A lot of us in this class, work in quality. So maybe make a comment about, kind of that intersection between AI mistakes, but also human mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's an excellent question. It's definitely you characterized it appropriately. It's one of these things where I think many of our colleagues in healthcare in particular, because it's always under a lot of scrutiny, they get into these sort of loops that I think of decision making, where they're like, we're not going to use AI, we're not going to introduce it because I don't trust it, I don't know how it works, and if it makes a mistake, it's going to harm somebody. And to that I say, well, that's absolutely true. But you and I all know, certainly if you've been exposed to any kind of real healthcare, meaning going to the hospital, getting some care done, having your loved one be exposed to the healthcare system, it's an incredibly dangerous place. There are mistakes that happen all the time, and humans are absolutely fallible when it comes to this. But I think doing that in this very constrictive way, and this like I'm not going to get involved, I'm not going to use or introduce AI, I think is a bit short-sighted in the sense that I know right now that there has been, in the time that you and I have just had this time visiting here, Pat, that there's probably been, I don't know, probably 100 new articles that have been published that literally came online while we've been sitting here that I've never seen, probably will never see. And you know what? They probably have some relevance, maybe one of those, or maybe one that came out in last week or last month or last year that I've never read about, never would know about it, probably has relevance to the patient I'm going to see tomorrow or the patient I'm going to see, 2 weeks from now. And I think it's a disservice. It's almost malpractice to not use a tool that can actually synthesize that information and bring relevance to making a better decision for the patient I'm going to take care of. Healthcare and medicine in particular, especially for our colleagues of a certain generation, I'm certainly one of those. We're very paternalistic, and rightfully so. It's really hard to get into medical school. It's even harder to go through residency. And certainly if you want to super specialize in something, I mean, it gives you, and it should rightfully give you a lot of ego and hubris because, not everyone could be a doctor. Not everyone could be a surgeon. So, and you're always challenged and tested to like what it is that you know. And so to think that there's a tool that is way smarter than you because it can synthesize massive amounts of information in a way that you can't, you have to understand and appreciate that that could actually be something that can help you be a better doctor. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time. And then I know that I see a question here, but I think this is a really important thing to share in the context of answering your question. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, whether or not doctors or healthcare administrators or what have you want to embrace technology and particularly AI in this moment. Because here's what's happening. The patients will make a decision. The patients have a say. I'm going to put a shameless plug here and invite you to teach at our next class on my side of the world here at Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm working on a new curriculum called AI in the healthcare ecosystem. And in developing this, we had all this list and brainstorming, and everyone had all of these different stakeholders. And one stakeholder that I pointed out was missing was the patient. And you would have thought it was this great revelation. I said, well, how could we not have the patient in this healthcare ecosystem? We had the payers, we had the insurers, we had technology, we had administrators, we didn't have the patient. And here's why patients are going to be so powerful. They are now. It's because for the first time ever in probably 3,000 years of documented medical history, patients have agency in a way that never had before. You could take all the information from your watch, all your information from medical records, and now apparently ChatGPT and Claude and all these people made it easier. You can upload all that information. It could synthesize what you have, your entire corpus of medical documented information, align it, juxtapose it to the best literature across the entire continuum of healthcare research, and come up with insights that you would have never had. And now you could take that information and you're armed with that to go talk to your doctor. So do you mean to tell me in 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, that doctor's going to know more than you do about yourself as an informed patient? No way. So with that, I say the paradigm has changed, and we have what I call asymmetric information power, and the power is shifted to the patient, and that's only going to increase over time. But I see there was a hand up, so I'm sorry. I went
Harry,
off.
go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great presentation, Dr. Tetteh. Quick questions. I have 2 questions on this. One was, out of your experience, what are the strategies that you have used or implemented in the organization to improve the adoption of AI tools in the healthcare? And the second question, I just want to reverse your question where you said you can sync your wearable data, your EHR data, everything. What if the third-party reimbursement insurance companies use it as not to pay because you're non-compliant?
Oh yeah, that's
your
a
thoughts
great
on this.
Yeah, let me answer the second question first. You're absolutely right. That's a big risk, right? Huge, huge risk. And in fact, it's already happening. You know that the insurance companies were using AI well before people started recognizing they were using it. You know what they were using AI for? To deny insurance claims. They're using it to be more efficient at denying claims because insurance companies make more money when they don't have to pay out for, whatever the care is. So I think that's huge, a huge risk. This is why in that AI ladder, I think you saw that there's a lot of ethics there. Who's going to regulate that? And of course, I live here in DC, so it's always amusing for me to drive past that big dome there where they're making all these decisions and realize they are always slow to make decisions and laws, especially when it comes to technology. So you have an open-ended, very good question that I don't really have an answer to, other than to say, I would not be surprised at all if insurance companies, payers, providers use that information against you, and it's going to be one of these, who's going to make the law, the policy to protect that from happening so it's not, unduly servicing or unduly hurting or harming patients. Now, your first question is a good one because that was really the juxt of what I was trying to teach and impart to my students when I was sharing with them the lessons we learned from implementing and adopting technology in a big bureaucracy like the Department of Defense. Like, how do you get people to adopt the technology? It turns out it's not usually the technology that's the problem, it's the people, right? And you have to have a framework in place. And I have a framework. I have this framework called VP4. I write about it in my book. And it goes through some of these steps that I think are important just to have as a communication device, but also a way of thinking about how you approach delivering a technology, whatever that technology is, into a healthcare ecosystem. But beyond that, a very practical thing that I think is important is, I don't want to simplify, but it is very important, is communication. And what I mean by communication is many people, especially if they're not facile with these tools and these AI, sort of platforms, are understandably very anxious about them, especially when you think about, hey, they could take my job and they can replace me. I was getting my blood drawn a couple of days ago, and I don't know if you've seen this on internet. It's been going around as I think it's a Swedish company actually. They developed an autonomous phlebotomist. It's a robot. It's fascinating because you put your arm in this machine, it straps in, it puts a tourniquet on, and it uses laser and ultrasound to pinpoint the vein. You don't see the needle. It apparently is probably innocuous in terms of its pricking, and it draws the blood and it goes into the tubes, and you put the tubes in and you don't have to see blood at all. So can you imagine, for someone who's very, squeamish about needles, you don't see a needle, you don't see the blood, and your blood gets drawn. And so I told the phlebotomist, I said, hey, have you seen this robot? And she said, no, I won't trust that. And it was exactly the opposite of what I thought she would say. She was a young woman, and I said, oh, did you see the robot that draws? She was completely incurious. I was just really impressive to me. And I said, wow, if I was her, I think, I mean, obviously I'm a lot more, I'm a different person, but I would have been like, really? Well, I didn't know about that. Show me where it is. And I would start to learn about it and think about, hey, I should probably learn how to use this machine. So at some point, when they do replace me with this machine, I know a lot about the machine. So maybe I can manage 10 of these machines, or maybe I can figure out a way to, expedite or change what I'm doing. So anyway, my point is communication is really important, and how you communicate how the technology is going to impact one's job, their existence, their agency. In the case of physicians, patients coming in armed with all this information is really important. People want to know that. But I do have this framework, and I think that communication is really important, and it's also very important to have trusted agents deliver the message. It's not good to have someone from outside the institution, that's from a big tech company, to come in and say, doctors, you guys are all going to use this thing right now, because you'll get a lot of resistance. You won't get buy-in, and I think there'll be a lot of challenges implementing or rolling that out. Much, much better if you can get, the organic workforce and the teams aligned with why we're doing this, why we're using this technology, what difference is it going to make in patients' lives, what difference is it going to make in the individuals' lives, and how it's going to enhance their workflow, and then get them to buy in and become champions. I think you're going to be a lot more successful. So I hope that helps.
So Hassan, this was amazing. What a treat. Thank you very much. Of all of your credentials, I think we may have buried the lead, though. You slipped in there that you've also done an Ironman.
I've done 2 now.
You've
Yeah.
done 2 Ironmans.
2 full distance. Yes. Yeah. Yep. And I failed a lot before I got to finish the first one, but I'm proud to say I've done 2 now, and my last one was a personal record. I beat my time by 47 minutes faster than the last one, and I have a pretty big, robust agenda this year because I want to try and qualify for the World Championship and get to go to Kona sometime in the near future. So, wish me luck.
That's amazing. Well, we will definitely wish you luck. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be in touch.
I will be as well.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess I'll see you soon.
Yes, in Houston.
In
Yes.
Houston. All right.
Awesome.
Very
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yep.
Take care, everyone. Good
Yep.
luck. All right. Bye-bye.